All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are tackling a huge challenge that pretty much every facilities and brand manager has to deal with: large-scale institutional branding. We're going to move past the old-school methods and really explore the modern solutions for branding entire campuses, hospital systems, you name it.
So this is really the core question, isn't it? We're not just talking about a single mural in a lobby anymore. It's about getting that consistent look and feel and doing it fast across dozens, sometimes hundreds of different locations. So how do you possibly pull that off without it turning into a total logistical nightmare of mismatched timelines, maintenance headaches, and constant disruption?
The real challenge here is just scale. It's one thing to do one wall, but it's another thing entirely when you're updating entire residence halls, trying to unify dozens of clinics, or rethinking collaboration spaces across the entire country. The truth is, the traditional ways of doing things just can't keep up. The game has totally changed, and now it's all about speed, durability, and that long-term value.
Let's talk about the specific pain points for a second. We're talking about adhesives that fail and start to peel. We're talking about shipping delays that can bring a whole project to a grinding halt. And of course, all the waste that just doesn't fly with modern sustainability goals. When you're rolling this out to multiple locations, these little issues, they blow up into major operational hurdles, fast.
Okay, so what are the options on the table? First up, let's look at the familiar one, the technology that's been the go-to for branded interiors for, well, decades.
And that, of course, is vinyl wall coverings. You know the drill. Graphics get printed on big rolls of vinyl at some factory, they're shipped to your site in panels, and then they're painstakingly installed with adhesives. It's a whole multi-step process that really separates the making from the installing.
And to really get vinyl's limitations, you gotta look at its built-in characteristics. Because it comes in panels, you always have seams. And those seams, that's the weak link. That's the primary failure point. They lift, they collect dirt, and they start to peel. On top of that, because you're using adhesives, removal can be a destructive process, often taking paint and drywall right along with it. So that's the traditional way. Now let's switch gears and explore the modern alternative. Let's see how it tackles these exact same problems, but from a totally different angle.
This is a fundamentally different process. Completely different. Instead of making panels somewhere else, a compact, mobile printer comes right to your location and prints the graphic directly onto the wall. It uses these really fast-curing inks, which means there's no vinyl, no glue, and, critically, no seams. The graphic literally becomes a part of the architecture itself. And you can see how this immediately addresses those pain points we were talking about. The application is adhesive-free, so you don't have to worry about damaging the walls when it's time for an update. The finish is completely seamless, which gets rid of the #1 reason for failure. And since it's all done on site, you're not sitting around waiting for replacement panels to shit if something goes wrong. Okay, so we've met our two contenders. Now for the fun part. Let's put them head-to-head. We're going to look at them across 4 key areas that are absolutely crucial for anyone making these kinds of decisions: speed, durability, value, and sustainability. First up, speed. A typical direct-to-wall print is done in under 5 hours. And because there's no adhesive that needs to cure, you can put that space back in service immediately. That is a total game changer in a place like a hospital or a dorm. Vinyl, on the other hand, is just slower on site. You've got surface prep, you have to align all those panels perfectly, and then you have to wait for the glue to set. All of that adds up to more downtime. Next, let's talk durability. The single biggest difference here is the seam, or the lack of one. Direct-to-wall printing gives you this continuous, unbroken surface. That means zero edges to peel back, nothing to snag on, nowhere for dirt to collect. With vinyl, those seams are always the weak spot. They're vulnerable to friction, to moisture, and if you clean too aggressively, you can start loosening those edges over time. All right, what about the total cost of ownership? The big picture. See, vinyl might have a predictable price per square foot, but the true cost pops up later. It's in the repairs and especially in the removal, which almost always means you're paying for significant wall repair too. The value of direct-to-wall comes from less disruption up front and a super simple end of life. You just paint over it. Think of the savings in labor and materials right there. And finally, sustainability. For any organization with ESG goals, this is huge. Direct-to-wall printing cuts out the PVC, the adhesives, and all the waste from shipping and packaging. And at the end of its life, it just becomes the primer for a new coat of paint. Vinyl, on the other hand, is usually PVC-based, creates a ton of waste with liners and adhesives, and when you take it down, the whole thing is probably headed straight for a landfill. So with all that information, how do you actually make a choice? Because look, The goal isn't just to pick a technology, it's to pick the right technology for your specific project. So let's walk through a simple expert framework to help you make that call.
The whole point here is to give you the right questions to ask yourself. Because once you start evaluating your project against a few key factors, the best choice usually becomes pretty obvious.
Let's just run through this checklist real quick. Start with your operations. Can you afford the downtime, or is every minute critical? Then look at your walls. Are they nice and smooth, or are you dealing with something tricky like textured concrete block? Think about your brand. Is a perfectly seamless photorealistic image a non-negotiable? And finally, think long-term. How will this be maintained, and what are your commitments to sustainability?
This chart kind of breaks it all down. If you're working in a high-traffic hospital hallway where durability and minimal downtime are everything, well, direct-to-wall is the obvious choice. But if you need a very specific textured or metallic finish for a special feature wall, or maybe you need to hide some really big flaws in a wall without costly prep work, then vinyl could still be the right tool for that specific job.
So ultimately, your decision really boils down to this one strategic question. Ask yourself, are you just applying a temporary layer to your environment, or are you truly integrating your brand into the architecture itself? Your answer to that is going to guide you to the solution that doesn't just match your design, but also fits your real-world, long-term operational needs.